What's up YouTube? Welcome back to Celio's Network. Today I'm doing my first power rankings video for the Chilling Reign standard format of the Pokemon trading card game. I'm making this in June 2021 and this should stay fairly relevant through July, and then in August we are getting the next set so soon already, Evolving Skies. So I've been playing with the cards for about a week now on PTCGO. We've had some tournaments happening and I feel like I can have a bit of an estimation on what the metagame looks like and what decks I think are the strongest. And I've been getting this question a lot about what new decks should I build, what decks are good to play for tournaments, and what should I expect to see. So that's why I'm making this video today, and I will have deck lists for every deck that we talk about today. So stay tuned and be sure to check out the links in the description down below. So before we get into this though, shout out to PotownStore.com, the best place for you to get PTCGO codes. If you're looking to build some of these new Chilling Reign decks, that's the place to get your codes, and use code Celio for 5% off. So here on Tier Maker, I have a bit of a tier list made, and I've included all of these decks in Tier 2 because I think there's so many decks in contention right now that could come up and become a little bit better as the metagame progresses. But I will only be talking about the top 10 decks today. So I wanted to have these here at the beginning of the video, but I'm going to take all of them back down and just put them with the rest of the decks because they are not making my top 10 today. So I have the top 10 and then a few sleepers at the bottom. And I will be showing all of the deck lists today on PokemonCard.io, a new sponsor of the channel, and you'll get to see some of the functions. And this is where you can find all of my currently built standard format deck lists. And like I said, the description for that will be the link for that will be in the description down below. So let's get into my power rankings. First, we're going to take a look at Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX with Mewtwo and Mew Tag Team, Galarian Zapdos, and a couple other attackers. Kind of just Shadow Rider Calyrex and friends. I think that and also the Shadow Rider Path to the Peak build are kind of tied in first place with a combination of power and popularity, and not too far behind that for me is Eternatus VMAX. Those three decks are kind of very close to each other by my estimations and in my eyes. So let's take a look at my lists that I currently have built for those. First, we have Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX with Mewtwo and Mew Tag Team and a couple of attackers. So we've got the Gengar Mimikyu, the Trevenant Dusknoir, and the two Galarian Zapdos to help you with the Eternatus matchup, because Eternatus has been extremely popular, and like I said, it's also very good. It's up there on my list as well. And we also have the Aurora Energies to help us attack with Galarian Zapdos, and Chaotic Swells to try to keep Path to the Peak out of play, as well as two Marshadow to also help keep Path to the Peak out of play. So this is the list I currently have built for Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX with Mewtwo and Mew and friends. And then for the Shadow Rider Path to the Peak build, this is my list for that. And I think this is really strong because players aren't ready to deal with Marnie, Nightwatch, Path to the Peak. Although players are getting more and more prepared as time goes on for that, with draw engines like Chinchino or putting Jirachi Team Up back into decks, or Kricketune V to help draw back up your hand. So decks are getting more and more prepared for this, but I don't think that makes the deck not valid anymore. I don't think it invalidates the deck. I think people being prepared for it might make your wins a little harder, but the deck is very, very strong, and that's why I have it up here in the S tier, or in the top 3 really of my power rankings. And lastly, in the top 3 in the quote-unquote tier S that I have is Eternatus VMAX. And Eternatus VMAX got a couple things out of Chilling Reign to bring it up here to be in the top 3 decks on my power rankings today. One of those things is Galarian Moltres, which allows you to accelerate an energy to it from discard once a turn. So then you can make up for Crushing Hammers or Yell Grunts, or even just not getting an energy attachment on turn 1 between Moltres and Energy Switch. And Moltres is also not weak to fighting, so it's a good alternate attacker versus fighting matchups. And the other thing that Eternatus gains is that Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX is weak to Eternatus VMAX, and that's really, really good. As well as Trevenant Dusknoir, one of the best attackers to pair with Calyrex right now, that is weak to Eternatus VMAX as well. So those both are great qualities that Eternus VMAX gains from Chilling Reign. Next in the tier 1 category for decks number 4, 5, and 6, I have ADP Zacian, Urshifu with the new Inteleon and the old Drizzle and the new Sobble, and then also Pikarom because Pikarom's never going to leave. So let's talk about ADPZ first. Not much to say about ADPZ. The deck gains 1 or 2 new things that you can use with it, actually 3 to be exact. There's been a lot of people playing it with Galarian Zapdos now as a way to just knock out the Eternatus in the active and not have to boss around it and get the Crobats. So in this list I have 1 Fighting Energy and 1 Aurora Energy. I'm not going too heavy into the Zapdos because you can still just play the game by going around the Eternatus. So this is something I'm trying out. I'm not sure if it is the way to go, but it definitely seems solid. And then we also have the Kricketune V added with Peony, and Peony allows you to discard your hand and search your deck for any 2 trainer cards. And this can be like an Echoing Horn to put a basic Pokemon from your opponent's discard pile onto their bench, which is the other new card in this deck, and a Great Catcher. And then you draw your hand up with Kricketune, and then you have cards to discard with Great Catcher, and you can win the game just like that. Maybe you need like an Energy Switch Rusted Sword, whatever it is. Peony seems like a nice option to have as of now. So there's a couple things in here that are tentative that I'm trying out, but ADP Zacian is just a brute force powerful deck. So it's at tier 1 for now. It's very popular. It's easy to get the pieces for it to build on PTCGO. A lot of people are playing it. A lot of people already know how to play it. These are factors that go into it, but it's also just an inherently strong combination of cards. Next is Urshifu Inteleon. Now this is the new build of Urshifu with the new Inteleon like I mentioned. And this deck is a lot of fun to play. I'm still working out the exact numbers for my list with this. I do want to fit in 1 of the Inteleon that searches for 2 trainers, and I'm not entirely sure if Cheryl is necessary or if I just want to be quote-unquote aggressive and not really care about when my Urshifu VMAX gets knocked out. So there's definitely some kinks to work out with the list as far as I'm concerned. But Urshifu VMAX Inteleon is really great because Inteleon can take care of your opponent's Mews if you're not able to bosses order them up and knock them out, and it also just helps you take care of damage in the way that Martial Arts Dojo was a little bit. But let's say versus Eternatus, you don't have to get Martial Arts Dojo down anymore. You can just ping the Eternatus a couple times with Inteleon. When you're hitting bench to Dene GX with the Passimian buffing you, or with Telescopic Sight buffing your bench damage, you can not need both of those combo pieces. You can also make up for it with the Inteleon's quick shooting ability. So this deck is versatile, it's strong, I believe it's smooth and consistent. It hits Eternatus for weakness, which is great. It gets hit by the Shadow Rider and its attackers by weakness, which we do have Jirachi GX for to try to mitigate a bit. So that matchup can be winnable just because of the really strong Telescopic Sight plus Passimian plus Gmax Rapid Flow combination, so you can take big 3, 4, 5, 6 prize turns with this deck. But of course Shadow Rider is going to be the matchup you don't want to run into. That's what's really keeping it in tier 1 or not being the best deck, I think. If Shadow Rider Calyrex wasn't around, and like we saw from Japan results and Taiwan tournaments, the Inteleon came out overseas before Shadow Rider Calyrex did, and that was a dominating deck, and then it kind of got taken down a little bit when Shadow Rider came out. And then we've got Pikarom at number 6 for my power rankings countdown, and I'm not really sure where I'm going with Pikarom at the moment. This list is inspired by Danny Altavia and Azul GG's lists. So I saw Azul GG have a list with no Mewtwo and Mew GX at all, but it played 4 Path to the Peak and just focusing on the lightning attackers, kind of just taking the loss to Rapid Strike Urshi. But I think Rapid Strike Urshi is very good. I don't think it can just be ignored like that. I don't feel comfortable taking a loss to Rapid Strike Urshifu, especially because there's multiple variants of it. So I'm trying out this list without Crushing Hammers, countering Eternatus with Path to the Peak, Marnie, and Stamp, as opposed to Crushing Hammers and Yell Grunt, and just not using Mewtwo and Mew in the Eternatus matchup, or any matchup where I think Path to the Peak is more valuable than Mewtwo. If the opponents have Path to the Peak when I need to use my Mewtwo, there is Marshadow, or if I even need to bump the Path to the Peak myself, or my own Path to the Peak, I can still use Marshadow to do that. So I do think that Pikarom is still strong. Then we've got Ice Rider Calyrex VMAX variants. Ice Rider Calyrex VMAX is the other horse of this set, the other kind of face card of the set. And there are two variants. There's Cinccino and Inteleon. I do think the Inteleon variant has more potential, but Cinccino's probably just more consistent. It's drawing you cards, it's discarding energy to put into the discard to then use with Melanie. But this variant allows you to get extra damage on the board, which I have found to be very important in a number of matchups, especially the tag team matchups. You know, 250 is your max, and then just one ping of damage fixes your damage against Mewtwo, fixes your damage against Pikarom with a big charm, fixes your damage versus Trevin and Dusknoir, a lot of things. But this is a deck that really functions without using rulebox abilities, so it can use Path to the Peak quite well. I might bump up the Path to the Peak count, since there's a lot of players now using Chaotic Swells to prepare for this list, or to prepare for Path to the Peak. This list was made at the start of Chilling Reign, so it may need an extra Path to the Peak, possibly even a Marshadow to get Chaotic Swells out of there. So the Inteleon build has a little bit less room in it, because it's playing a stage 2 line instead of the Cinccino version playing a stage 1 line. But I do think this has a lot of potential. Maybe not the more consistent version, but I do think at the end of the day it's probably better. And then we also have Lucmetal Zacian, which I didn't think was going to survive as well as it did, but it seems to be doing just fine. Now, Lucmetal Zacian, it seems that I have not uploaded to PokemonCard.io yet, so I'm definitely gonna have to get on that. Let's find Lucmetal here on my PTCGO. So we'll have one list here that we're not looking at on PokemonCard.io, unfortunately, because I forgot to upload it. But Lucmetal Zacian, not much has changed. That's probably why I didn't upload it, because there's nothing of note here to really talk about. I haven't changed much for Lucmetal Zacian yet. I haven't seen anything from the lists that people are playing in tournaments that I feel like is worth changing. This is just where I have it for now. Fire is not very popular, so I don't have Coding Metals and Goose Mahala, just running all basic energy to keep it smooth and consistent. But the deck is still doing well, especially if people are playing Eternatus without Phoebe, Urshi and Inteleon without Phoebe, and don't have ways to get around Zamazenta. And lastly, we have these two fire decks down in the bottom. We've got Victini VMAX and Blacephalon. I won't go too much into them because the decks haven't changed too much with Chilling Reign, but I do have lists for them on PokemonCard.io. Victini VMAX is very aggressive, hitting 220 on turn 2 for just 2 energy. You can boss up these and just destroy your opponent's game plan, so it does have that aggression going for it. Ice Rider Calyrex VMAX being quite popular right now can be an issue, but you can also just knock out Ice Rider Vs on turn 1 and your opponent doesn't recover from it. And then Blacephalon or Tempozard has a lot of options. It hits Zacian for weakness, which is always nice, which is another thing that Victini VMAX has going for it, but a little less because it doesn't actually one-shot Lucmetal and doesn't one-shot Zamazenta in its VMAX form, because Zamazenta can't be hit by it. But Tempozard has options. It has Cramorant to snipe the bench. It has Blacephalon as a single prize attacker, which can be nice to have. And it has Reshizard and Heatran for the early aggression, or just the aggression that comes out of nowhere with Heatran GX. So I have Victini as deck number 9 and Tempozard as deck number 10. And as you saw in the beginning, I did have a lot of other decks in here in tier 2 because I think they have potential. But right now, this is what I look at the meta as being. These are my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 top decks, with 3 sleepers down here in the bottom. I think Single Strike in general has some potential because you have a few dark attackers, and dark typeness is good. Dark type weakness is good to hit right now, and a few fighting attackers, and fighting is good to hit right now. You even have the new Bennett that can hit for psychic, but I don't think that card's very good. Dragapult VMAX seems pretty good on paper because it's hitting for Psychic, it's resisting fighting. You can play Inteleon to spread more damage. You can play Galarian Zapdos, which I do have on my list on Pokemon Card IO. We'll check out real quick. I do think this list is quite good, countering Eternatus with the Galarian Zapdos, countering Urshifu just naturally by being a Psychic deck, and playing you can play Path to the Peak in this list as well. I haven't fit in Path to the Peak yet, partially because one of the top decks we're playing against is Zapdos. One of the top decks we're playing against is Eternatus, and we want to counter that with Zapdos, so we're probably not going to play Path to the Peak against that. And another top deck we're naturally countering is Urshifu, and Path to the Peak doesn't really hurt the modern Urshifu VMAX variants. So Path to the Peak would be in there definitely to help against Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX and other ability heavy decks, but this list is kind of just trying to focus down on the two matchups that I want to beat and beat those well, and then in time we can make it a little bit better versus Calyrex perhaps with Path to the Peaks. But yeah, the Path to the Peaks wouldn't really help against Urshi and Eternatus, but definitely would help versus the non-Path to the Peak variant of Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX. And then we've got Mewtwo Psychics, the Psychic Mewtwo build. I already have a video with this, and I played it on stream, played it in a tournament. I have made one change. I dropped second Peony for a Mawile GX because this deck doesn't handle Ice Rider Calyrex very well. I didn't think many people would be playing it, or at least as many as are playing it currently. So we popped a Mawile GX into there because Wily Bite does 30 more damage for each of your opponent's benched Pokemon. So if they have a full bench, we can do 320 to an Ice Rider Calyrex for a Rainbow and a basic energy. And I am playing 2 energy switch and a tag switch in the deck, so we can switch energy to the Mawile, attach an Aurora, and Wily Bite. Also, the ability Captivating Wink is just a good ability, so even if you're not playing against Ice Rider Calyrex, it's not useless. The other thing that could go in this spot is potentially a Trevenant Dusknoir, but Trevenant Dusknoir's Night Watch does need 3 Psychic to work, and we are playing some non-Psychic energy, so that can be a little awkward at times. So I have those as my sleepers right now that I think could pop up a little bit. So yeah, that's my top 10 power rankings for the Chilling Reign standard format as of late June 2021 for the Pokemon trading card game. I hope you enjoyed this video. Be sure to check out the links down below. My Twitch, PokemonCard.io, PotownStore.com, and subscribe to this channel for daily Pokemon TCG content if you enjoyed the video. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time here on Celio's Network.